Now, before we start talking about the current issues, it is important for you to look back about branches of linguistics. Because this is linguistic research methodology, it is very important for you to remember about micro and macro linguistics. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, students. Welcome to my class, Linguistic Research Methodology. In this meeting, we would like to discuss about current issues in linguistic studies. Remember, before you start your research, it is important for you to find what is or what are the issues, what is going on in the society, what is going on in the Indonesian context, and what is going on in global world. Let us start. Now, I'm going to talk about our learning objective. So our learning objective for today is to understand current issues in linguistic studies so that you can get a research topic and start to prepare your research. Remember, this is the beginning of the semester and you have to anticipate by doing a lot of readings and trying to find research topic so then you can start your research for your proposal. Now, before we start talking about the current issues, it is important for you to look back about branches of linguistics. Because this is linguistic research methodology, it is very important for you to remember about micro and macro linguistics. Do you remember micro and macro linguistics? Micro-linguistics is a study or branches of linguistics which discuss about the language itself, the inner system of the language. Meanwhile, macro-linguistics looks at the system of the language or the language itself in relation to other branches of disciplines, or other disciplines like psychology, sociology, and so on and so forth. Now, micro-linguistics are divided into some parts. Meanwhile, macro-linguistics also is divided into some subfields. Now, let us take a look at it one by one. All right. Actually, in general, we can divide micro-linguistics into three subfields. Number one is phonetics and phonology. Number two is morphology and syntax. And number three is semantics-pragmatics. Okay, what about phonetics and phonology? I'm sure you still remember about phonetics and phonology. Phonetics and phonology is actually a branch of linguistics which looks at sound system of the language itself. It looks at how language is produced by human. We talk about the acoustics of the language itself. So when it deals with sound system of language, it means that you deal with phonetics and phonology. Okay, the second branch of microlinguistics is morphology syntax. Now, when we discuss about morphology syntax, it means that we discuss about word formation. We talk about language structure. We talk about clause. We talk about sentence, how they're forming a new word, for example. We talk about jargon. We talk about noun phrase, verb phrase. We analyze the structures of sentence. All right? Next, we talk about semantics and pragmatics. I'm also sure that you have learned about semantics and pragmatics. So when we talk about semantics, pragmatics, it means that we are looking at meanings of language. There are a lot of kinds of meanings of language. It can be from literal meaning until speaker's meaning. So when we talk about the meaning itself, it deals with semantics. But then when we talk about speaker's meaning, how language is used in the society, we look at the context, it means that we are discussing about pragmatics. Now, after we discuss and look at microlinguistics, you've been also very familiar with the term macrolinguistics. So macrolinguistics is principally, like I have told you before, is how we study language in relation with other fields or other disciplines. Now, there are a lot of examples of subfields of macrolinguistics, but here in our lecture, I'm going to discuss some of them so we can recall actually how many fields of macrolinguistics that you have to understand, okay? Number one, we talk about social linguistics. So when we talk about social linguistics, it means that it studies about language varieties, yeah, how language is used in the society. We also can discuss about language policy, language planning. We talk about register, so how language is used in different part of the world. Yeah, we also talk about, you know, some of the issues in about local language, for example, language maintenance, for example, you know, things like that. Next, in macrolinguistics, we also find semiotics. What is semiotics actually? So semiotics principally is study of symbol, yeah, language as a symbol. So you can look at how is language is presented in a form of symbol. So you can look at advertisement, for example. You can look at a logo, for example. So you want to know what is the meaning of the sign there, yeah, symbol and sign. Okay. Next, we have also psycholinguistics. What is psycholinguistics? So actually, psycholinguistics discusses language in relation to psychology. You look at how is language processed by our brain, you know, how language is acquired by children, for example. We can also look at the cognitive process of language itself. So many things related to language processing, it means that we deal or you deal with psycholinguistics, all right? Now, the next thing that we can discuss or subfield of macrolinguistic is translation. You may be surprised why translation is part of macrolinguistics. So translation is basically also a study of language when you try to, you know, transform, you know, one language to another language, from English to Bahasa Indonesia or from Bahasa Indonesia to English. And you can also look at the cultural issues, yeah, inside the translation results. You can also look at the language shifting, the meaning shift, for example. You can look at the translation of affixation, so the dynamics of the translation, which is very interesting. So this is a huge industry when we talk about translation, all right? And the next subfields that we are going to touch, yeah, in this meeting is discourse analysis. So discourse analysis is also interesting. So it's principally looking at how, you know, the use of language based on its context and co-text, how, you know, things around the language influence the language itself. So we can discuss about, you know, power and ideology. So we can use critical discourse analysis, all right? So we can look at lecture discourse, for example. We can look at, you know, a newspaper, yeah, newspaper. We can look at classroom. So we can look at the political discourse. We look at media discourse. So many things that we can discuss in discourse analysis, all right? Now we move to our main discussion, which is about current research in microlinguistics. So you've got an explanation in the beginning of this lecture that part of microlinguistics is phonetics and phonology. So what is the current issues in phonetics and phonology right now? So the never-ending issue when we talk about phonetics and phonology is about productions of English sound system. So you can look at the productions of vowel, the productions of consonant, the production of diphthongs. So it's actually a study of speech. Now you can look at the screen. This is one of the example of a research article which brings productions of English diphthong in a speech. of a prominent figure, which is the President of Republic of Indonesia. So this study is trying to look at how our leader, produced English diphthong while he was delivering a speech in an international forum. So it is important because how you produce your language can give an impact when you have to perform in front of, diplomatic forum, for example. So it is very interesting. Now, another current issue about phonetics and phonology that you can consider into your research is that you look at intonation, so study of intonation and how your mother tongue, your local language, influence your foreign language or your second language. How you produce declarative sentence, how your declarative and interrogative sentence are determined by the intonation, because in our mother tongue, meaning mostly is determined by intonation. So intonation can also leave some perception that a group of people maybe tend to be rude, for example. It sounds too loud, for example. We can see in, let's say, in Lampungese society that is discussed in this article. So this article is talking about comparison of declarative and interrogative intonation in Lampungese language, because the issue that is trying to be brought by the writer is that, a lot of people misinterpreted about Lampungese people. They cannot differentiate when, Lampungese produce declarative or interrogative sentence. Actually, this person is stating something or asking a question. This is very important in communication. So it will help us to smoothen our communication, to, avoid misinterpretation. All right? So you can look at some other issues in phonetics and phonology. Okay? Now we move to current issues or current researches in morphology and syntax. Like I have told you, principally when we talk about morphology and syntax, it means that we are looking at how a word is processed, how is the structure of a sentence. A clause is formed, for example. Now, if you look at this research, this is quite current, published in Teknokrat 2019. So this research is actually observing grammatical collocation in students' writing. So it looks at how students, compose the structure so that it creates a paragraph or a meaning in the writing. So if you don't use the collocation properly in the perspective of syntax, that will be a problem. So it will not be a solid writing. All right? So when we talk about morphology and syntax, actually you can look into writing as well. Okay? Now, this is another interesting discussion about morphology and syntax. Actually, when we talk about morphology and syntax, it's not only about, looking at a text, but also you can go around, look at the, the sign, the billboard. Here, what is written by this group of researchers is names, names. It's very interesting. Naming as branding on nature tourism destination in Pangandaran, West Java. So this group of researchers tries to, look at the phenomenon, how to create, a name, of a new destination of tourism so that it can attract people to come. So it is easy to be remembered so that people can come back, and it will help in promoting the place. So it is very interesting. So when we talk about morphology and syntax, it does not limit on the text. Remember, you don't have to rely on a text, but also, you can look at things around you and look at how, those word formation, the structures of the sentence and language create something, maybe you can look at also a product, an international product, how a particular brand is named with that kind of brand. For example, like Coca-Cola. Why Coca-Cola can be an international brand? Maybe there is, word formation that was formulated so that the brand can be a strong brand, for example. Or McDonald's, for example. Why the M, C, and Donald can be, an international brand, or like KFC with that kind of simple, word K, F, and C. So it creates a world-class brand. Yeah, it's very popular. It's very interesting to look at morphology and syntax. Now, if we look at some current researches in microlinguistics, especially semantics and pragmatics, remember, semantics is study of meaning, yeah? Pragmatics is study of speaker's meaning. So look, one of these researches about semantics, conceptual meaning of secretary. Why it becomes very important issue? When we talk about a profession, yeah, this is based on the issue in this paper, is that, our profession is shifting, the meaning. It's growing, for example. Like in this research, secretary in the past is very different from secretary in today's world, in the 21st century. Maybe, if this research looks at, in the old text, when the text tried to picture the function of secretary in the past, it was just for arranging files, for example, or arranging meetings of the boss, But in today's text, in any kind of textbook about secretary also, prepares trips for the boss, let's say, also help the boss preparing the presentation, for example. It also about, making appointments as well. I mean, the meaning of secretary is now different, which means that the responsibility also follows after that. So if the meaning of a profession is shifting, maybe the profession itself is also growing. Like, I give you another example of the word lecturer, for example. Maybe in the past, lecturer was just teaching in the university. But now, or maybe since 1990s or starting 21st century, many lecturers do more research than teaching. So, in the current text, when we talk about lecturer, lecturer also conducting research, a lot of researches, and also social services, and so on and so forth. So it's not only about teaching. Okay, interesting, right? When we talk about conceptual meaning. Now, this is about also one of the issues in semantics pragmatic studies. It's, this research about commissive speech acts, from our leader also. So this is a pragmatic study. How, our leader use a language or deliver a statement. So it implies something in the speech. So we cannot just say that from the speech of leader, it's just about words. No, speech acts. There must be speech acts. Speech act means that when you deliver something, it must be followed by an action, for example. So you cannot underestimate when a leader say or promise something, for example, I will improve the health protection of the society, which means that when he already delivered that, it will be followed by an action, for example, by a meeting, yeah, with Ministry of Health, for example, with the House of Representatives, for example, talking about what should the leader do to improve the health quality of the citizens, So it is very interesting to look at speech acts produced by leaders. It can be our regional leaders, it can be our ministers, it can be our CEO of the company, it can be our national leaders, which means that we are going to look at whether when he says something, will it be followed by an action or not? You know, so we can see about the credibility of a leader, yeah, either in a company or in our regional basis or our national leader, which is very interesting. Okay, that was some current issues in microlinguistics. We will end our meeting till here. In the next meeting, we will talk about current issues in macrolinguistics. So please stay tuned and don't go anywhere.
Terima kasih sudah menyaksikan video pembelajaran ini. Jangan lupa like, komen dan subscribe, serta nyalakan tanda loncengnya agar kalian tidak ketinggalan informasi update lainnya. I hate audio.